My mom says it's unfair she can't see my child, but she always chose her stepdaughter over me. Hey everyone. So, I'm Lisa, 54, and this story revolves around my blended family. I have one daughter, Rachel, who's 27 now, and she's from my first marriage with my ex-husband, John. We split when Rachel was 4 years old, which was hard, of course, but we kept things pretty civil between us. A few years after the divorce, I met my current husband, Mark. He's 55 now, and he came into the picture with 2 kids from his previous marriage, Andy, who's now 25, and Sarah, who's the same age as Rachel. For me, the best part was that Mark's kids were so close in age to my daughter. I figured Rachel and Sarah would hit it off and be just like sisters. When Mark and I got serious, I was excited at the thought of blending our families. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Both girls were about to be teenagers, so I thought they'd become instant best friends. Sarah was more outgoing and social, while Rachel was always on the quieter, more independent side, but I figured they'd balance each other out. I'd even tease them, calling them my twin daughters, though they both would roll their eyes at me when I said it. I could tell Rachel didn't love the nickname, but in my head, it was just harmless fun. Once Mark and I got married, we went all in on making this blended family thing work. Family dinners, outings, vacations, you name it, we did it. There was an adjustment period, sure, but it was actually better than I expected. Sarah was around the house a lot, always chatty and wanting to hang out with Rachel. It felt like the two of them were becoming exactly what I'd hoped for, close friends who could lean on each other. I'd watch them from the kitchen, Rachel listening to Sarah talk on and on about the latest gossip from school or which boys she thought were cute, and I'd feel this pride swelling up. In my mind, we were succeeding as a family. I don't know if Rachel felt the same. She didn't say much about it, and I figured she was just going along with it. She's always been reserved like that, more independent, not really the girly type, which is why I thought it was great she had Sarah, who could help bring her out of her shell. Things really started to feel normal when both girls hit college age. Rachel was the first to start, and not long after, she got a part-time job at a cafe near campus. She'd come home sometimes and tell us about work, and she seemed genuinely happy. Then one day she brought up this guy, Nick. She'd met him at the cafe, and he was a bit older than her, maybe by 3 or 4 years. The way she talked about him, it was pretty clear she was into him. She'd mention little things he'd say or do, and it wasn't hard to see where this was heading. Eventually, she brought Nick over to meet the family. He was quiet and polite, the kind of guy you'd feel comfortable having around. He was a little older, which at first felt strange, but he seemed mature and level-headed. He fit in pretty well with us, and I could tell Rachel was thrilled to have him around. Soon enough, Nick was practically part of our family. He'd join us for dinners and gatherings, and he'd often sit down to watch a game with Mark or chat with me while I cooked. He'd talk about his job, his plans, and his future with Rachel. I have to admit, I liked him. He was polite and had this calm energy that seemed good for Rachel, who sometimes got a bit anxious or withdrawn. I could see that he made her happy, and isn't that all a mother wants for her daughter? Things were going so well that I almost forgot there could be any downside. I thought, this is it. We're all finally coming together. And then, the proposal happened. Nick proposed to Rachel in front of the whole family at a dinner gathering, completely out of the blue. It was one of those big romantic gestures, and of course, she said yes. That night was perfect. I remember looking around at the whole family and thinking, this is what I always wanted, a full, loving family. Mark was beaming, clapping Nick on the back, and everyone was laughing and celebrating. But when I glanced at Sarah, she seemed quieter than usual. I thought maybe she felt left out, since she didn't have anyone special in her life at the time, unlike Rachel. Later that night, I tried to cheer Sarah up a bit, saying something like, "Don't worry, your time will come." I didn't think much of it. She just smiled and nodded, saying she was happy for Rachel, and that was that. I went to bed feeling proud and hopeful. I thought Rachel and Sarah would only grow closer through this whole wedding process. They'd be there for each other, like real sisters, planning wedding details, dress shopping, all that fun stuff. But as it turns out, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. In the weeks that followed, Rachel started acting a bit distant. She was still engaged and excited, but she didn't seem as close to Sarah anymore. At first, I brushed it off. Planning a wedding can be overwhelming, and I figured it was just stress or nerves. However, over time, I started to notice the tension in little ways. Rachel would show up to family dinners, but seemed quieter, less engaged. When she and Sarah were in the same room, they weren't chatting or laughing like they used to. I'd ask Rachel about the wedding, but she'd give me short answers, as if she didn't really want to talk about it. I chalked it up to stress again, thinking she'd just come around when things settled down. Meanwhile, Sarah kept acting like everything was fine, trying to stay cheerful and chatty. She'd ask Rachel about wedding plans, but Rachel would brush her off, saying she was still figuring things out. Looking back, I can see that maybe Rachel was trying to keep Sarah at arm's length. But at the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just typical sibling stuff. The turning point came one evening at dinner. Rachel hadn't come around in a while, so I invited her and Nick to join us. She looked tense from the moment she walked in, barely making eye contact with Sarah. At one point during dinner, Nick made some joke about being stuck with the in-laws soon, and Rachel just gave this forced smile. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just brushed it off, saying she was tired. I tried to lighten the mood by asking if Sarah and she had gone dress shopping together yet. Rachel's face tightened, and she said, "I'll handle it on my own." That stung. I wanted this wedding to be a time for the two of them to bond, to be there for each other. But Rachel seemed so determined to shut everyone out, even Sarah, who was just trying to help. I didn't know what was going on beneath the surface, but looking back now, I realized that was probably the beginning of something bigger. It's funny how you can be so sure everything's fine, only to realize later how much you were missing. But at the time, all I could think was that Rachel was being distant and cold, pushing away the family who just wanted to support her. A few weeks after that dinner, things just kept getting weirder. Rachel was practically avoiding us at this point, and I was honestly a little frustrated. I mean, planning a wedding is stressful, sure, but it's supposed to be fun too, right? You're supposed to lean on your family, not run away from them. One Saturday, I was home alone when I heard loud knocking at the door. I opened it to find Rachel, looking beyond angry. Her face was red and she barely even said hello before pushing past me into the house. She looked around, almost like she was checking if anyone else was there, and then turned back to me. "Where's Sarah?" she asked, voice sharp and demanding. I was confused. "Sarah's out running errands with your dad," I told her. "Rachel, what's going on?" But she didn't answer me. Instead, she started pacing, mumbling under her breath about betrayal and not believing it. I was starting to feel anxious. I mean, Rachel's never been one to lose her cool like this. I reached out, trying to get her to stop pacing, but she brushed my hand off. "Mom, do you know what Sarah's been doing behind my back?" she finally asked, practically spitting out each word. I could see her fists were clenched and she was shaking. I felt a lump in my throat. "Rachel, calm down, please. What are you talking about?" "Sarah's been sleeping with Nick," she said flatly, staring me down as if daring me to deny it. "She's been with my fiancé, Mom. Your perfect little Sarah has been sneaking around with him." I felt like I'd been slapped. I stood there, completely stunned, trying to process what she'd just said. Sarah? With Nick? That couldn't be right. I knew my girls had their differences, but something this big? It just didn't add up. "Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "are you sure? Maybe you're just misunderstanding something?" She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Misunderstanding? Oh no, she told me herself. I confronted her and she didn't even try to deny it." I was still struggling to believe it. It felt impossible, like there was no way Sarah would do something like this. Rachel had to be exaggerating or maybe even twisting something she'd heard. I tried to think of anything Sarah might have said or done recently to hint at this, but nothing came to mind. "Rachel," I began, searching for the right words, "I know you're upset, but maybe this isn't what you think it is. Maybe it's just a mistake." She cut me off with a harsh glare. "Are you kidding me, Mom? You're seriously defending her?" I was stuck, completely torn between the two of them. I couldn't believe that Sarah, my sweet Sarah, would betray her like this. But I also couldn't deny how deeply hurt Rachel was. The way she looked at me with this mix of anger and disappointment, it stung. "Rachel, I'm not defending anyone," I tried to explain. I want to understand. Maybe you and Sarah can sit down and talk about this. We're family, Rachel. Families work things out." "Work things out?" she practically shouted. "This isn't just some small misunderstanding, Mom. She went behind my back with the guy I was going to marry. She destroyed everything." I tried to take her hand, but she pulled away, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. I could see her struggling to keep her composure, and I felt this pang of guilt for not immediately taking her side. But in my mind, Sarah deserved a chance to explain, didn't she? We hadn't even heard her side yet. "Look, Rachel," I said slowly, "I know you're angry, but maybe there's a way to move past this. Sarah must have had a reason. People make mistakes." Her face twisted, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "A reason? Mom, there's no reason that makes this okay. I came here because I thought you'd actually care, but all you're doing is defending her." She shook her head, looking at me like I was a stranger. I didn't know what to say. I felt helpless, like anything I said would only make it worse. "I do care, Rachel. I love you both, and that's why I don't want this to tear us apart." She stared at me for a long moment, and then, almost whispering, she said, "You already chose her." And with that, she stormed out of the house, leaving me standing there, reeling from her words. I felt this awful pang in my chest, wondering if maybe she was right. Had I chosen Sarah? I thought I'd been trying to help, trying to keep the peace, but Rachel seemed to think I'd betrayed her by not instantly condemning Sarah. After she left, I sat down, trying to make sense of it all. I wanted to talk to Mark, to figure out what we should do, but part of me was scared to bring it up. How was I supposed to explain that my daughters, who I'd always wanted to be close, were now practically at war with each other? When Mark got home, I decided to keep it brief. I told him that Rachel was upset about something involving Sarah and Nick, but didn't go into too much detail. He brushed it off, saying Rachel would come to her senses soon. He figured she was just being dramatic, overreacting. Later that night, Sarah came home, and I couldn't look at her the same way. I wanted to ask her what had happened, to get her side, but I hesitated. Part of me was terrified to hear her confirm it, to hear that Rachel had been right all along. What would I do then? So instead, I avoided the confrontation. I thought maybe if I left things alone, it would all blow over. That maybe in a few days everyone would calm down and we'd be able to talk this out like adults. But that didn't happen. Instead, Rachel stopped coming around altogether. Days turned into weeks, and every time I reached out, she'd either ignore my calls or give me short, clipped answers. I wanted to ask Sarah what was really going on, but I couldn't bring myself to push her on it. I'd catch her glancing at me sometimes, a worried look in her eyes, but I just couldn't bring myself to pry. Part of me wanted to keep believing that maybe, just maybe, there had been some misunderstanding, that Rachel had blown things out of proportion. But deep down, I knew that if what Rachel said was true, this wasn't going to just go away. After Rachel's angry exit, I kept hoping she'd reach out, that we'd find a way to talk this through like a family. I mean, it's not like I hadn't seen fights in my time. Siblings argue, families have their issues, but eventually people come around. That's what families do. Or, that's what I thought anyway. The days after our talk, Rachel was like a ghost. No texts, no calls, just silence. I'd message her every few days, something simple like, "Thinking of you," or "Miss you, call when you can." Nothing deep, just an open invitation for her to come back. But each time I sent a message, it felt like I was tossing it into a black hole. One evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when Mark came in. I mentioned that I hadn't heard from Rachel, thinking he might suggest we go see her, or even give her a call. Instead, he shrugged it off like it was no big deal. "She's probably just being dramatic," he said. "Rachel's always been a bit sensitive." I felt my stomach twist at his words, but I didn't argue. Mark's approach has always been more hands-off. In his mind, things work themselves out eventually, so why stir the pot? But I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel needed us to reach out, that she was waiting for some kind of sign that we cared. Still, part of me worried that pushing too hard would only make her feel more distant. So I kept my messages short, hoping she'd eventually come around on her own. I even mentioned it to Sarah, who looked genuinely upset when she heard that Rachel hadn't been in touch. "Mom, I tried apologizing to her," Sarah said, her eyes welling up a little. "I told her it was a mistake, and I'd never meant to hurt her, but she doesn't care. She said she never wants to see me again." Hearing that from Sarah hit me hard. I could see the hurt on her face, and it made me realize how complicated this had gotten. Sarah was in pain too. I wanted to help both my girls, but it felt like no matter what I did, I was letting one of them down. Things took an even stranger turn after that. Nick and Sarah. Well, they started dating. I know it sounds odd, but the two of them seemed to just click in this effortless way. It was like their connection was meant to be, though I knew how it must have looked to Rachel. I'm not saying it wasn't awkward at first. After all, Nick had been engaged to Rachel, and now he was dating her sister. But when I watched them together, I could see they genuinely cared about each other. They seemed happier together than I'd ever seen Nick and Rachel. Honestly, I didn't expect it to work out between Nick and Sarah, but somehow it did. They were like two pieces of a puzzle that just fit. Sarah brought out this warmth in Nick, and he seemed to really understand her, giving her the confidence she sometimes lacked. They'd laugh at each other's jokes, finish each other's sentences, and whenever they looked at each other, there was this lightness in their eyes. But I knew Rachel couldn't stand it. The first time she found out about Nick and Sarah being together, she looked absolutely furious. I'd never seen her that angry before. She felt betrayed, like her sister had stolen not just her fiancé, but also her happiness. I tried to explain that sometimes relationships change, that maybe things hadn't been meant to work out between her and Nick. But to her, that just sounded like excuses. So, I did what I thought any mom would do. I tried to bring them together, even if it was just in small ways. I suggested that maybe Sarah write Rachel a letter, explaining how sorry she was. Maybe, I thought, a heartfelt letter would soften Rachel's stance, help her see that Sarah truly regretted everything. But Sarah shook her head, looking defeated. I already tried, Mom. She won't listen. I hated feeling so helpless, but I wasn't about to give up. I kept hoping that if I just tried hard enough, they'd eventually work it out. After all, life is too short to hold on to grudges, and they were sisters, or as close as sisters could be. I kept reminding myself that Rachel was hurt, and hurt people sometimes need time to heal. But deep down, I was growing more frustrated. It wasn't just me feeling the strain either. With Rachel's silence and Sarah's guilt hanging over the house, even family dinners felt tense. Andy would try to lighten the mood with jokes or random stories, but it was like everyone was just going through the motions. I'd look at Sarah, who barely touched her food, and then at Mark, who'd mostly ignore the situation, like it would all blow over on its own. I tried reaching out to Rachel's dad, John, thinking he might be able to talk to her. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce, but he was still her father, and maybe she'd listen to him. I explained what happened. Well, the parts that I could anyway. But John was just as frustrated as I was. He said Rachel had barely been in touch with him too, that she wasn't answering his calls either. I don't know what you want me to do, Lisa, he'd said, sounding almost as helpless as I felt. If she doesn't want to talk, she doesn't want to talk. I spent so many nights lying awake, replaying that last conversation I had with Rachel over and over in my mind, wondering if there was something I should have done differently. Maybe I should have taken her side right away, told her she was right, and Sarah was wrong. Maybe that would have been enough to show her I cared. But then, what about Sarah? She'd have felt like I was throwing her under the bus, and I couldn't do that to her either. I started convincing myself that Rachel just needed more time. Eventually, I thought, she'd calm down, come back, and realize that we all still loved her, that we wanted her to be part of our lives. A few weeks later, I decided to host a small family gathering. I figured it would be a good excuse to invite Rachel over, give her a reason to see us all, and maybe break the ice. I reached out to her, told her about the gathering, and added, "It would mean a lot if you could come." I didn't get a response, and I kept checking my phone all evening, hoping for a last-minute text saying she'd be there. When the day of the gathering came, I kept glancing at the door, hoping to see her walk through it, but she never showed. Sarah noticed my disappointment and tried to comfort me, saying, "Maybe she just needs more time, Mom. She'll come around." Her words felt hollow, but I forced a smile and nodded. I wanted to believe it, but Rachel's absence was like a heavy weight on my chest. Every empty chair felt like a reminder that something had gone very wrong, and I wasn't sure how to fix it. After the gathering, I sent Rachel one last message, a simple, "We missed you today," but it went unanswered, like all the other messages I'd sent before. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew louder. I wanted to reach out again, but part of me was starting to worry that I was pushing her further away with each attempt. I began to question everything I'd done, wondering if I should have handled it differently, if maybe I'd somehow made things worse by trying to make peace. And then one night, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, Sarah came in and hugged me tightly, out of nowhere. I asked her what was wrong, and she just shook her head, saying, "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." I hugged her back, but I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Here I was, comforting Sarah, while Rachel was out there, hurting and alone, refusing to let any of us in. I wanted so badly to be there for both of them, to fix this mess that felt like it was tearing our family apart. But it seemed like the harder I tried, the worse things got. As I went to bed that night, I felt this sinking feeling that maybe, just maybe, I'd lost Rachel for good. After weeks of silence from Rachel, I finally came to a point where I thought, maybe I just need to let her come around on her own. I was exhausted from all the waiting and worrying. I thought maybe backing off would give her the space she clearly wanted, and that she'd eventually come back to us when she was ready. It wasn't what I wanted, obviously, but I was out of options, and it seemed like nothing I did was helping. Then, one day, out of the blue, an invitation arrived in the mail. It was Rachel's wedding invitation. I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at it for a good minute, trying to process the fact that my own daughter hadn't even called to tell me she was engaged again, let alone that she was planning a wedding. I opened the envelope, and there it was, A simple card with her and her fiancé's names, the date, the location, and nothing more. No little note or personal message, just the basic details. To say it felt impersonal would be putting it mildly, but I tried not to dwell on it too much. At least she was inviting us, I thought. Maybe this was her way of extending an olive branch. The wedding was set for a small venue a few hours away. I remember calling Sarah and telling her the news, expecting her to share in my excitement, or at least surprise. But instead she got quiet. She didn't say much, just something like, "I guess that's good, right?" It was such an odd response. I wanted her to be as hopeful as I was, but I also knew things were still a little raw for her. Still, I told myself it was fine. We were going to support Rachel, show up for her, and maybe this would be the beginning of fixing our family. We booked a hotel nearby, got everything arranged, and I even went out shopping to find the perfect dress. I wanted Rachel to see that I cared, that I was there for her. I was so focused on how this would be a turning point, a chance for us to start fresh. But just a few days before the wedding, Mark came down with something. It wasn't anything major, just a cold, maybe a touch of the flu. But he was laid up in bed and he wasn't looking great. I spent the day tending to him, getting him soup and all, but I was worried. The wedding was coming up fast, and I didn't know if he'd be up for the trip. The night before the wedding, I finally called Rachel to tell her we might not make it. I was nervous about it, but I thought she'd understand. "Rachel, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "We're so sorry, but your dad's been feeling pretty under the weather. I don't know if we'll be able to come to the wedding tomorrow." There was a long pause on the other end. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. "So, you're not coming?" I felt the tension rise instantly. "It's just, your dad's really not doing well, Rachel. You know we'd be there if we could. We even booked a hotel and everything. I was so excited to see you." She didn't answer for a moment, and when she did, she sounded like she was holding back. "You know what, Mom? Just don't bother then." And with that, she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. I wanted to call her back, but I was so stunned, and honestly, a little hurt. I knew she was angry, but I thought she'd understand that I couldn't exactly leave Mark alone when he was sick. I spent the rest of the night feeling this strange mixture of guilt and frustration. I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel was overreacting, that she was taking things too personally. But I also felt like maybe I'd let her down. It was a strange and painful place to be, and I didn't know how to get out of it. The next day, instead of going to Rachel's wedding, I stayed home with Mark. Part of me thought she'd reach out, maybe even tell me she understood. But that call never came. I told myself it was fine, that she just needed time to cool off, and that we'd talk things out eventually. The following week, though, was eerily quiet. No word from Rachel, not a text or a call. I kept hoping for something, anything to show that she was ready to work things out. But there was nothing, just silence. It was like she'd completely cut us off. In the days after, I started hearing things from other family members who had gone to the wedding. They told me it was a small, intimate gathering, and that Rachel looked beautiful. I even heard that her dad, John, walked her down the aisle. It hurt, knowing we'd missed such an important moment. And while I wanted to be happy for her, I couldn't help but feel a little left out, like I'd been excluded from my own daughter's life. When I talked to Sarah about it, she tried to make me feel better. She said Rachel was just being dramatic and that she'd eventually come around. But I could tell she was just trying to keep me from feeling bad. Deep down, I think Sarah knew this was serious, that Rachel wasn't going to forgive and forget so easily. I went back to my routine, trying to pretend things were okay, but there was this emptiness that hung over everything. Every time I looked at my phone, I half expected a message from Rachel, a text saying she missed us, anything to show she still cared. But every day, I was met with nothing. The silence between us was unbearable. I'd always thought Rachel would want her family by her side, no matter what happened. I thought she'd reach out eventually, that this was just a phase. But as more time passed, it started to sink in that maybe this wasn't a phase at all. Maybe she was really gone this time. I'd catch myself wondering if I'd made the right choice, if maybe I should have just gone to the wedding without Mark. But that felt wrong too. Mark was my husband, and he needed me. I shouldn't have to choose between my husband and my daughter. Family was supposed to stick together, through sickness and everything else, right? Days turned into weeks, and I started to realize I might never get that chance to make things right. Rachel was out there, living her life, and I was just here, waiting, with nothing but silence to keep me company. It's been months now since Rachel's wedding, and the silence between us has stretched so long that I sometimes forget what it was like to hear her voice. She's completely cut me off. No texts, no calls, nothing. Part of me wants to keep reaching out, but another part is terrified that she won't answer. I'd sent her a few texts right after the wedding, little messages just to remind her I was still here, still her mom, but she never responded. I finally just stopped trying, even though every day I hope today's the day she'll get in touch. Life has been moving on, even if it feels like there's this huge hole in it now. Sarah and Andy have been here for Mark and me, trying to keep things normal, whatever that means now. They don't really bring Rachel up anymore, like we're all pretending she's just on some long vacation. But every time there's a family event, every holiday, every birthday, that empty chair just reminds me that things aren't the same. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room scrolling through photos when Sarah came in, holding her phone with a funny look on her face. She sat next to me, her face kind of unreadable, which made me nervous. Sarah's not usually one to hide her emotions, so I knew something was up. "Mom," she started, "I thought you'd want to see this." She handed me her phone, and there it was, a post from Rachel's Instagram. She was standing with her hand on her belly, a soft smile on her face, and her husband Dan had his arm around her, looking down at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Rachel was pregnant. For a second, I just sat there staring at the screen, not sure how to feel. She looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And yet, it hurt. This was my daughter, my firstborn, and here she was starting this new chapter of her life without me. It's like I'd missed out on everything, her wedding, her pregnancy, and now this baby, my grandchild, that I'd never even meet. Sarah must have noticed the look on my face because she placed her hand on mine. "Mom," she said gently, "I thought you should know. I didn't want you to find out through someone else." I nodded, barely able to speak. "Thank you, Sarah." I forced a smile, trying to hide the heartbreak welling up inside me, but I could feel my chest tightening. Later that night, when Mark came home, I showed him the picture. I expected some kind of reaction, but he just glanced at it and nodded, saying something like, "Well, good for her." He didn't seem nearly as affected as I was. He'd moved on in a way I couldn't. To him, if Rachel wanted to shut us out, then that was her choice, and he wasn't about to chase after her. But for me, it wasn't that simple. I couldn't just let go. In the days that followed, I found myself checking Rachel's social media obsessively. Every time she posted a new picture, I'd scrutinize every detail, looking for clues about her life, trying to feel connected to her in some small way. I knew it was pathetic, but it was all I had left. She was out there living her life, and here I was, stuck in this constant state of missing her. One day I decided to call her. I figured maybe she'd want to talk about the baby, that maybe, just maybe, she'd let me back in. I dialed her number, my heart pounding, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, something simple like, "Hey honey, it's Mom. Just wanted to say I'm thinking of you. I saw the picture and I'd love to talk when you have a chance." I don't know why I expected a response. I checked my phone constantly for days afterward, hoping for a text or even a missed call, but it never came. And eventually I just gave up, realizing she was really gone. A few weeks later, my younger daughter Mia sat me down. She'd been reading comments on Reddit about family situations similar to ours, where parents had lost contact with their kids, and she told me that maybe I needed to face the truth. She wasn't unkind about it, but she was blunt. "Mom," she said, "maybe Rachel just wants her own life, separate from us. Maybe it's time to accept that." The words stung, but I couldn't argue. Maybe she was right. Maybe Rachel had moved on in a way I wasn't ready to accept. So here I am, still trying to process all of it. I keep thinking about the memories I have of Rachel growing up, the way she used to smile at me, the sound of her laughter. I remember the little girl who used to hold my hand, who used to look up at me with love and trust. It's like that girl's gone now, replaced by this stranger who doesn't want me in her life. Every day I tell myself I'm okay, that I can handle it. But the truth is, I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to stop hoping she'll come back, that she'll call me one day and say she misses me, that she wants her mom back in her life. People say time heals everything, but I'm starting to think that's a lie. And now for the update from Opie's own daughter. Hey everyone, I'm Mia, 17, Rachel's younger half-sister, and I figured it was time to set some things straight. There's been so much tension and drama with Rachel being pregnant and everything. That was a couple of months back, and let me tell you, it's been a whirlwind of arguments, tears, and my mom going into full denial mode. I tried my best to get her to see that she'd crossed a line, but she just doesn't get it. Even after hurting Rachel, my mom still insists that Rachel is overreacting, calling her unfair and saying anyone else would agree with her. Honestly, I thought, All right, let's test that theory. I've been lurking on Reddit for a while now and know how people can really lay into someone when they're wrong. So I encouraged her to post about it here, anonymously, just to see if people would back her up. Spoiler alert, they didn't. I helped her write the post, made sure she explained her side, even if she left out some details that would have made her look worse. I even dared her that no one would take her side after the nonsense she pulled. Watching her reaction to the comments was priceless. She genuinely believed people would be on her side, like she'd done nothing wrong. She spent 3 hours reading the responses, and the comments just got harsher. She even got downvoted to oblivion, and that hit her hard. She was crying, saying people didn't understand and were being cruel. When my dad came home, he found her bawling and blamed me for airing our dirty laundry online. Mom demanded I delete the post, but I just deleted Reddit from her phone and left the post up because I felt like everyone needed to see the full story. Now that I've read all your comments, I'm here to clarify a few things. I'm the observer in this family mess, and it's pretty wild seeing all the dynamics play out from the sidelines. So here's the scoop. First of all, no, as far as I know, my mom didn't cheat on my dad or anything. Some of you guessed that. But Mom and her ex-husband had an amicable divorce. Mom just has this weird thing about creating the perfect family. She always dreamed of having twin girls, but that never happened. So she sort of tried to mold Rachel and Sarah into twin daughters in her mind. They're close in age, sure, but they were never as close as Mom made it seem. She created this whole fantasy of Rachel and Sarah being best friends, doing everything together, living matching lives. But honestly, Rachel and Sarah were just two normal people who got along, but they weren't attached at the hip like Mom wanted. Mom just ignored that reality and pushed them to be these inseparable sisters. When Rachel got mad at Sarah for what happened with Nick, it shattered Mom's perfect image. Rachel refusing to forgive and forget went against everything Mom tried to build. And it's not just a Disney family fantasy Mom's been trying to live out. She also thinks family always sticks together no matter what, and wants to sweep everything under the rug to show people how we're so close. But Rachel was done playing that game. She wasn't willing to forgive a betrayal just to make Mom happy. And if I'm being real, that hit Mom harder than she'll ever admit. Oh, and here's another thing. Sarah and Nick's relationship is anything but perfect. You guys were right to guess that Mom's vision of a perfect family is totally fake. Sarah and Nick are practically on the brink of divorce. Not that my mom would know because she's too busy living in her fantasy world, but let me tell you, Nick isn't some saint. He cheated on Sarah at his own bachelor party with a stripper, and Sarah forgave him, saying it didn't count. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure Sarah's not been totally faithful either. The whole thing is a mess. And yet, Mom somehow still thinks they're this ideal couple. She has no idea that Sarah and Nick have had so many issues that it's laughable. If she knew the real story, it would probably shatter her whole world. But honestly, I don't think she wants to know. Now let's talk about Rachel's wedding. Mom and Dad had every intention of going at first, and we even booked a hotel nearby. But then, a few days before the wedding, my dad started feeling a bit under the weather. It was a minor flu, nothing serious. He wasn't bedridden or anything. But Mom turned it into this huge drama, exaggerating his symptoms and telling Rachel that Dad was too ill for them to make the trip. Rachel, of course, wasn't having it. She knew it wasn't that serious and felt like Mom was just making excuses. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. Mom was looking for a way out. I think deep down, she was upset that Rachel hadn't asked her to be involved in the wedding planning and that she and Dad weren't included in the ceremony. So she decided to use Dad's illness as an excuse not to go, which only made Rachel angrier. Rachel didn't even argue when Mom called to cancel. She just told her not to bother showing up if that's how things were going to be. Mom acted hurt, but I knew it didn't really bother her. In her mind, Rachel had excluded us first by not making Mom part of the wedding. It's just one more example of how my mom's pride keeps getting in the way. After that, Rachel cut almost all contact with Mom and Dad. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't come around for holidays. The only way I got updates about her was through my own Instagram, but even that felt distant. Recently, Sarah even mentioned wanting to try for a baby, and I'd bet money that Nick's going to freak out when that happens. He's barely committed as it is. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. I don't know if Sarah's genuinely trying to fix things, or if she's just hoping that having a baby will magically solve their problems. But good luck with that. To everyone reading this, I'm sorry if I dragged you into this whole family drama, but I really needed Mom to see what she was doing. She tried to spin the story and paint herself as the victim, but you all saw right through it, and I think that's the wake-up call she needed. I doubt she'll change, but at least now she knows not everyone's going to buy her side of things. And just to clear it up, yes, the first post was by my mom, and this updates all me, Mia, the youngest sibling. If anyone has questions, I'll try to answer them. Sometimes moms can be so wrapped up in their own worlds that they lose sight of how their actions impact others. I just hope Rachel finds her happiness, even if it's far away from us. She deserves her own fairy tale ending, not this messy drama mom keeps stirring up. As for Sarah and Nick, they deserve each other. And honestly, I hope they stay as miserable as they seem. Watching them pretend to be happy while their marriage is clearly on the rocks is almost comical. The fact that they've lasted this long is shocking, but I don't think it's going to hold up much longer. So that's the reality check for now.